absorbed by cells is very much like are enacted with different types of electricity. Sort of like if you wet down a metal and then stick it into a socket, it's going to have a different type of data than a dry metal would. But what type of solution would you coat it with? In the olden days, batteries had like vinegar and copper plates topped on top of each other, and this made a specific type of structure, is that design, that something which should have been considered when testing an experimental. When you're charging something, how does it not have better capabilities if you use a stronger outlet? There's a lot of different items. They can be called nefarious or miscellaneous, but the difference between two categories of solid and liquid cannot be considered the same if it wasn't a combustion of both. But what if in gold? You know, like in beverages, and it's the collection of cells that allow for a transistor within a body to enact a certain code that feels natural. And so what would it mean if we had the ability to mine cosmic scales to better micromanage the small stuff? We're talking stuff as small as single-celled organisms. It would be tiny blotches on like dollars that look cruddy, but you would be able to see more from them. A light bulb and a sign that goes out. These would all have tiny little indentations on its weathering that would allow for more info to be utilized, especially if you just know great symmetries, which everyone knows how much grass is greener on the other side. mRNA technology would have a sequencing that would be put into a gene as a spike protein. This could be quiet as a carrier and crossed over into a fetus if seeped inside to a sperm or an egg. The ability to have that extracted, that spike protein out of a baby, which would be inside every single cell of its body, causing it to have blood clots, is a technology that currently doesn't exist. The crossover of a silent a gene, making it be as though it's silent until a baby is born, and that baby being born with something that's a spike protein would be inside each one of its cells, so much so in that it would be in each one of its cells. The technology to get that out of each of them, each gene out of the cell having a spike protein in it, causing clotting of blood, is not a technology currently in genes. The crossover might mean in something that is, for example, a touch screen. When you lose the ability for it to click because your hands are not real, is one thing that a crossover could activate. I keep mentioning red and blue shifting is because everything is all together as one light from the Big Bang. It's the same as sound. There's light and sound on all things. Sound is highly inoculated with kinematics, so that's the pressure of the propagation of gas mostly. But when it comes to light going through air, it's basically water because there's water and air, but we don't have that fine tune of scale on things, so it's just written off as like a dummy variable. When light isn't disjointed from air, except for when it's heat abrasing off of like a blacktop, you see a mirage effect, and then light is disjoint in air. looking fluid. Just to normalize those two things, you need to know how the capitalization of bigger objects like cosmic scales are intertwined with the finer ones like small scale virus particles. For all intents and purposes, it's as easy as making a certain shape of a stick and just stomping in the middle of it. This is one type of crystal. If I propagate these a bit more accentuated, this is a different crystal. A big foot, so if I can step on two, and there you have the difference of it. In gene sequencing, the reading frame can have a crossover where it's silent until the next generation if it has an RNA spike protein that wiggled in. It'll be activated for the embryo permanently in an ovary or a sperm. Super dangerous for the species. The dielectric is a crystal. How many different crystals are in a structure of what you're using in a plug-in for an electric outlet? Piezoelectricity is a niche category of electric activity. This is done by having a mechanical aspect with pressure on a dielectric crystal. The dielectric crystal can be any shape of a vacuum, like the Dyson, if it's made up into the specific shape of one. From the difference of a small particle that's dangerous, a virus, that is the difference of mining in outer space. Something that would be catastrophically difficult. All of Jupiter's moons, the Kuiper Belt, Venus, and what have you. All of these places would be having elements that could go into machines that we use. Like a catalytic converter in all cars has platinum. In other important metals, you can find on motherboards or in Pascal's triangle on computers. They like using fine metals because it dials up better. So mining with these things, and then the finer metals you have, the more ability of conductivity you have. I'm always wondering, when you're charging something, how does it not have better capabilities if you use a stronger outlet? You know, an outlet that has all these three different, like a fourth prong in hole, and it doesn't. So the ability, if you had fine metals, you could have a charge that meant more. And that's the difference of what's missing from a virus outbreak, is it's of a complication material that is unmatched in the current modern day economy. So I'm branching out to have an ability to do all these mining manufacturers of outer space distant locations. You have to have a strategic ability in order to do it safely. That strategic ability is nothing short of what can be seen as what's missing that causes a lockdown to be inevitable. What this is, I believe, is like best known in the body, how your body works. It's called physiology. It's the anatomy put into motion. And your anatomy put into motion can be seen as what platonic shapes are in math, if you're going to be deriving them in an equation. Those are two of the same things, they just sound fancy, but they're forward and backwards. For red and blue shifting, that means everything is red and blue shifting. And then for red and blue shifting, the platonic shapes to the structure of physiology would be these things I've thought up of. It's the missing key link of shadow orbits and photon shells. Thanks for watching. I think the world is in grave danger of not having enough like farming food coming in, and I don't want to name groups of people because that's low class, but the ability to have a word and a say in it is something that's necessary.